Yeah, let's drive this in one more point. A lot of women say, you know, I haven't got any sexual problems here, in the sense that that the stuff that you're talking about, or you've written in your book, that it really applies to me. Mm-hmm. But you're saying it applies to every woman that's listening that's married.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, over and over, I failed to sever the soul ties that connected me to every man that I had had sex with. And just for example, one of the men that I just constantly compared my husband to was Ray. He was the dean of my college, and I had engaged in an inappropriate relationship with him when he was married. He wound up leaving his wife. We lived together for a year before I came to my senses and realized he's 20 years older than me. I'm 20, he's 40. This is a father figure in my life. This is not a real intimate relationship, and finally found the strength to leave that. Yet, years later, I'm telling my husband, I just wish that you would be a lot more suave and debonair and romantic like Ray. And I couldn't believe I said it, but that was what was in my heart and my mind at the time. And my husband just very lovingly and very calmly said, Shannon, you have no business comparing me to a man that you had no business being in a sexual relationship with.
And if Ray's wife is watching, I'm glad that she's finally onto this guy. Mm-hmm. But you know, what Shannon was doing is what so many women do. They set their expectations high because they've idealized other men or other male figures in the absence of a real male father in their life. Not a father figure, but a real connecting father. They idealize what a man should be and could be. And then once they're in the marriage, they never ever allow their husband to be who he is or what he could be.
He can never measure up.
So rather than free him to be all he can be, they are trying to conform him to an idealized image that they can never meet. So you end up with a woman who stubbornly resists anything this guy wants to do. She doesn't want to be a part of it because he's not the man she wanted him to be. And then she has this arrogant entitlement. Since he is not who he needs to be, I am entitled to go and get what I need and get what I want from other sources. And as long as it doesn't become physical, then in her mind, I'm within the guidelines. Well, if you get close enough to the fire, eventually you're going to get burned, and then you'll have to deal with that. But I really believe that so much of our marital discontent comes from a woman's high expectations, and then from a man's expectations of what it means to be the leader, which really means dictator many times to him. And so you get these two disconnected people in a marriage, and it's no wonder it's not working. And her part of this, which is what we're talking about today, her part of this is stop the comparison, lower the expectations, and burn those bridges to those soul ties that she has. And it's very hard for a woman who wants to stay connected to history and all the wonderful feelings they had with the person. But it is that official burning of the bridges and breaking those soul ties that will free a man to be all that he can be and meet some needs, not ever meet all needs.
But Shannon, isn't one of the things the women, if they give up this illusion of what a man ought to be, they feel like I'm dead in the water? Mm-hmm.
It can be a scary place. But exactly what Steve described is how I was living my life. It was about at the 7-year mark of our marriage that I approached my husband saying, you just don't meet my emotional needs. And I was thinking of leaving him and my 2 very young children. Aaron was 3 and Matthew had just been born. But I was thinking of leaving in pursuit of the love that I felt entitled to. And fortunately, Greg saw past my weaknesses to my needs and spoke the truth in love and said, Shannon, you have a Grand Canyon of emotional needs. And even if every man in Dallas lined up outside your doorstep, it would never be enough to satisfy you. He said, until you look to God to satisfy your emotional needs, there's nothing I can do. And while many women...
Before you go on from that, to me, I've always been impressed with 2 pieces of this story. One is that her husband... he's kind of like Zeus or something. I mean, I don't know. This guy has got it together. But he knew how to respond to his wife in a connecting way with wisdom, and he did it. Yeah. And so often us men, we don't talk. We pull away, and so we don't influence the outcome of the disaster. But the other thing about Shannon's story that I've always been impressed with is this wasn't a woman of the streets. You know, she wasn't out selling herself, or she wasn't involved in porn shop stuff or whatever. She was a Christian woman.
I was a youth pastor.
And involved in the church, ready to walk out on her marriage with 2 kids. And if somebody on this profile is willing to do that, well, certainly you can see why so many other women on the fringe of church work also end up at a place where they say, maybe I just need to leave.
Well, most women would have been offended if their husbands had said something like that. But to me, it rang so true in my spirit, because I had given lots of men plenty of opportunities to meet my emotional needs, and no man ever filled the bill. And the insightful thing that Greg said to me is, Shannon, I know that this is not about you and me. This is about you and your dad. And I could not understand that, but when my counselor went through 6 months of intensive group and individual counseling and Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous meetings, and when I had to make a list of all of my sexual partners throughout my teen years, the common thread among them all was that they were significantly older than me and in some form of authority over me. And that told me that I have been pursuing a father figure, and that I needed healing in my relationship with my Heavenly Father, but also healing in my relationship with my earthly father. And God has been very good to bring that about.